You are listening to SPN, the Sports Podcasting Network.
وتكلم من هناك لشوارزنيجر.
Ya lo hace, pierna derecha, directo al arco, golazo, golazo, golazo.
This is Soccer Today, live on SPN Radio, your new live show about the beautiful game in all its glory, with Duane, Rollins and Kevin Laramee. MLS, EPL, La Liga, Champions League, all is fair game. Powered by the Sports Podcasting Network. Visit us at sportspodcastingnetwork.com.
Can you hear the bell ring? No. No. Can you hear the bell ring? No.
Fine.
Can you hear the bell ring, Kevin?
What I hear ringing is my ears because the next possible presence for the Montreal Impact in the CONCACAF Champions League is the fall of 2018, Duane.
Yeah, no, I feel you because I remember when TFC bowed out last year in the Voyageurs Cup. That was the thought that crossed my mind is, oh my God, it's 2 years until they can possibly get back to the CCL. Montreal Impact not in the final of the Voyageurs Cup for the first time since 2012, Kevin. It's got to be a bit of a weird feeling there in Montreal today.
It is. Well, let's face it, it wasn't the most pleasant experience last night in the stands, on the pitch. First of all, it was a cold night. Did it have anything to do with the result? Probably not. But it was cold. Strikers were cold. The game was cold. The weather was cold. It's just a cold day yesterday.
It was a cold day in Montreal. Dark day in Montreal.
And it's weird because it's the Grand Prix weekend. There's a buzz in the city, but not about the Voyageurs Cup.
I know how much you love the Grand Prix weekend, Kevin.
You have no idea how fun this weekend will be for me.
Yeah, there you go. Anyway, we'll leave that well enough alone for your F1 show. Maybe you can get into that one there, Kevin. But
Scuderia F1 podcast. Look for me this weekend with my microphone at the circuit. So you might see me pop up interviewing some well-known faces this weekend.
There you go. Exciting times there. Exciting times. Kevin, our question of the day today is this, and we're going to get into this a lot more in our second and third segment today. We'll probably talk a little bit of Voyageurs Cup for close to 30 minutes. We're going to get into the Cope in a minute, but let's throw the question of the day out there so you can contemplate it, so you can go vote if you haven't already. It's a simple one, and it's very Canadian-focused today. It's the question today is, of the two Voyageurs Cup semifinal winners, which was more impressive, Toronto or Vancouver? What do you think, Kevin?
Vancouver was impressive last night, but they were in a hole that wasn't necessarily smaller than the one that Montreal was, but bigger because they didn't have that away goal. So they have to really win that match outright at home, which they did. For Montreal, they had that away goal, but clearly weren't necessarily, I don't want to say up to the challenge, but it wasn't a priority this game last night, even though there was a strong lineup, but the schematic change and the absence of Piatti really played a role, and Toronto was full measured. Toronto was able to play defensively very well yesterday, especially in the first half, suffocating Montreal. That was impressive. But at home, Vancouver putting three past Pfizer, which is one of the best goalkeepers in NSL, won the Golden Glove last year. Not necessarily an easy task. They did that 3 times last night to get that victory, and they held on late because Ottawa was pushing in the last 5 minutes, got close a couple times, never got that look. But Vancouver, for me, was more impressive last night.
All right. I'll save my opinion until we get into the full segment on it. I'll tell you real quickly what the results. It's actually 2/3, 1/3 that people are voting for Toronto. I don't know whether that's because I'm the Toronto guy and I put it on my site or not. I have a pretty even amount of followers throughout the country, so I wouldn't think it's quite that. But that's the impression here. And again, like any of these questions, you interpret your own way. So some people might be looking at just last night. Some people might be looking over the full 2 legs. Anyway, I'll leave my opinion till later. Let's put that aside for now. There'll be lots of V-Cup talk. That's a mouthful, Kevin, in the next segment. But I did want to run down the Copa games quickly before we do that. well, it's kind of a boring night, not a great night. Last night for the neutral.
It depends if you're the Haiti goalkeeper, Duane. If you're the Haiti goalkeeper, it wasn't a boring night last night.
Yeah, no, I empathize there. It's 7-1 for Brazil.
What score? What score, Duane?
7-1. It's a score they're familiar with, but
yeah,
a little different this time. It begs the question whether there's such a thing as too small of a minnow. Haiti got into this tournament kind of weirdly, and it was based on ranking at a certain time, and we all know what we think about rankings. I would have really liked to see a more competitive qualification process for this tournament that might have avoided having a team like Haiti in there, because I can think off the top of my head of 3 or 4 teams in CONCACAF that would have probably represented a little bit better than Haiti is. So nonetheless, they got there and they got their goal, so I guess that's something, but not much more to say about that game, eh?
Well, not really. No, Brazil look good, but it's against Haiti. Is that result replicable against a big team? Probably not. Is this a win replicable for Brazil? Yeah. Do you need that type of performance to put all the pressures and the bad rap that is going on in their country right now aside and focus on the sport right now? Yeah, they needed to win. Maybe that's what they needed to galvanize the troops, quote unquote.
Yeah, we'll see how that plays out. The one thing I will say about Haiti, you got to give them either credit or shake your head. They lined up to attack. So, hey, why not?
Let's go blow for blow with Brazil. What can go wrong?
Yeah, 7-1. That's what can go wrong. The other game of the night, Peru and Ecuador. It's a game that ended 2-2. Peru blew the 2-goal lead, and I was actually watching this game with a Peruvian, so he wasn't very happy. I can tell you that. It was a result that wasn't great for them. They are ahead of Ecuador, 4 points to 2 right now for that second qualifying spot. Actually, they're tied for Brazil, top of the group, but they have Brazil up next, whereas Ecuador is playing Haiti. So you have to think that really Peru, by losing the 2-goal lead, might be in trouble now unless they can find a way to get a result against Brazil.
Yeah, and that's not an easy task. It's easier said than done. Peru is way more well-equipped than Haiti, yes. But when you have to beat Brazil to have a shot of going out of the group, you're not here talking about an easy situation.
Yeah. As I said, not a ton going on in that last night, really.
You're right. It was a quiet night. No drama, no weird wrong anthem playing. The tournament got into the groove, and maybe the first lull was last night.
Yeah, and those nights are bound to happen in this group because Brazil didn't send its full-strength squad, because Haiti's in it. Ecuador, I think, is a decent side. Peru is a bit unpredictable. I like watching Peru, but they do what they did last night a lot. They can get a couple goal leads and then just crap the bed. That happens to them all the time. That's been the story of Peruvian football since, some would argue it's karma for something they did in the World Cup many years ago, but I'll leave that well enough alone because a long time's passed and very few of our listeners were around then. But
yes, yours truly included, probably.
Yeah. That was in the 82 World Cup where they sort of allegedly conspired to allow another team to go through by playing to a draw. But anyway, we'll leave that well enough alone. Look, tonight's the exciting night to me because Big Bad Mexico gets back up there. And if I can, mute my ears for the goal kicks, I love watching Mexico other than that. So I'm very excited to watch what they can do tonight. And I give Venezuela a shot against Uruguay.
Yeah, why not? Uruguay is not necessarily 100%. And, we talked about peaking in a lot of our shows, Duane, about athletes peaking. And I'm not sure that any program right now is peaking for the Copa. So Venezuela, if they are on a good day, could rival Uruguay on a all right day. And you have Mexico later on against Jamaica. Jamaica with probably my favorite goalkeeper in North America, at least right now, Andre Blake, 20 years old, a stud, a bona fide stud for Jamaica, plays for Philly for now, probably going to move on to a bigger and better club next year. But Mexico versus Jamaica, it could be interesting tonight, this game, if Mexico has the offense dialed in like in their first game. Blake's going to see a lot of ball. If Blake's in a good day, it's going to be interesting.
All right, Kevin, I have a very important question that I want to ask you now, okay?
Go ahead.
All right. Is it time to stop with Suarez bite puns?
Well, it's been, 4 years?
4 years, coming on to 4. Well, yeah.
Well, there was a second one with Giaccherini, but still, yes, it's time.
It's time. Yeah. A lot of people, if Suarez might come back, put the bite back in the attack. I'm hearing that one out there. Lots of puns out there. It's kind of an easy target though. So we're declaring now that the time for Suarez bite puns is over. That is our official decree from the Soccer Today studios that you no longer should be using Suarez bite puns unless he does it again. And you never know.
Unless he bites somebody.
Oh, there you go. I'll tell you, my other half, she's a Liverpool fan, for those that don't know, and she loves Suarez. She's one of those people that actually likes him because most Liverpool fans do. And he was brilliant for that club, so I can understand why they would.
And it's the type of player that he plays for you. You love him. If he plays against you, you hate him.
Exactly. And I was sitting on the couch when the biting incident took place, and she was on her phone. She wasn't really paying attention. I was like, oh, God, should I tell her? Oh, God, should I tell her? Oh, God, should I tell her? It was a bit of an awkward moment. I finally had Liz, you need to look at the TV. And then we had a whole bunch of shaking our heads and moving on from that.
You thought it was awkward? Put yourself into Giaccherini's shoes. It must have been awkward for him. What is going on? What is he doing? Come on, get off my arm. Get up.
It was just it's so id. Anyway,
Exactly.
we're talking about the biting now. After we declared that we should stop talking with the biting, so what are you going to do here, Kevin? What are you going to do? It's one of those narratives that out there. I mean, It follows him around, just like Zidane's headbutt. Such a brilliant player, but we all remember his last moment on a pitch.
Jeez, let's just get started because I could talk about this 2006 memories for hours.
Yeah, I was at a pub full of Italians, so you can imagine the reaction when that happened there.
I've talked this week earlier about the feelings I had in '98 because of the two teams and how I was, my heart was torn between the two. Imagine in 2006. Exactly.
All right. On that note, let's take a quick break. We'll come back and start our V Cup talk up.
You are listening to SPN Radio, powered by the Sports Podcasting Network. Visit sportspodcastingnetwork.com for more.
Make sure to give SportsPodNet a follow on the Twitters if you don't already. I know a lot of people follow our individual accounts, and we have a lot of interaction on those, and we love that, and we're not going to stop that. But we do put all of our show information out on SportsPodNet, so give it a follow too. It's not a spam account. You're only going to see shows when they come up, so we give you all the good information right there, Kevin.
Exactly. The only thing that is being published on SportsPodNet, it's shows, live shows. That's it. So give us a follow. And if you want to talk to us and interact with us live during Soccer Today, at SportsPodNet is the place to do it.
All right, we're going to open the phones up in 15 minutes time, but let's talk about the V Cup, Kevin and I, right now first. And we touched on it in the last segment, and I said that I would hold my opinion until we got here. So I'll give you my opinion now. I think that it's Toronto, and, you could say that it's biased for me to say that, and whatever. I mean, if you think that, I'm not going to convince you otherwise. However, my rationale is that they played such a young lineup, partly by necessity, partly by choice. And they impressed me in the way that they were able to overcome. No one gave them a chance in that first leg. Those 4 goals to get that 4-goal lead was simply remarkable. And for them in the second half, I find yesterday's game equally as impressive in the sense that it was a bit of an older lineup. Like Will Johnson got in there. They had Drew Moore back in the lineup. So it wasn't quite as young as the first time, but they shut it down, and they were able to defend as a unit for the full 90 minutes and deny all. But, Drogba had a couple good chances. You really missed Piatti, as you said. But by and large, they shut it down, and I think Toronto was the full measure. And I don't think, at the start of the year, I thought Toronto might be the favorite to get by Montreal this year. But at the start of this tie, I did not. So I'm impressed with that, whereas Vancouver did what they were supposed to do.
Oh, yeah, no, obviously. Vancouver did what they were supposed to do. They played with the roster lineup and who traveled and who stayed home and who was going to play the second leg and first leg. Basically, Coach Carl Robinson of the Vancouver Whitecaps, managed his team, managed his roster correctly, the playing time. And it was shown yesterday. When you're looking at Ottawa, the amount of travels that they had to do since the last game, let's just take a look here quickly, because the NASL doesn't follow international break still. It's a possibility for the near future, but the Commissioner Patterson said earlier this year that until more players from the NASL are affected by those international call-ups, it wouldn't be the case for now. So Ottawa had to travel to Florida to play in the weekend, travel back to Ottawa, then go cross-country to Vancouver, and they're going back to Ottawa today. So the amount of travel, we're talking about 2 cross-continent trip for Ottawa, and it showed in this game. Yeah, Ottawa pushed on late in the game, but the 70 minutes before that, it was all Vancouver.
Yeah, that penalty 3 minutes in.
Oh,
Really.
Alves, Duane. How many times did I talk to you about Rafael Alves? For me, one of the best defender in ASL. He won Defender of the Year 2 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. A product of Marc Dos Santos. He found him, brought him up here, and he's staying with Ottawa for now. But 3 minutes in, captain of Ottawa, bad penalty.
Yeah, I mean, he pushed him in the back a little bit, and the argument, I'm sure there's some Fury fans out there that don't think it was a penalty, and I can understand where they're coming from, but when you put your hands on an attacker in the box, you're opening yourself up for that, and that's not a very satisfying answer for me to give you on that. It might not have got called in some circumstances, you're right, but by and large, like I said, you just can't put your hands on someone. That's just it, especially the way they call the game nowadays.
No, exactly. And for Montreal last night, again, we talk about no goals in the absence of Piatti. I think it's important that we mention that Toronto played very well, that Toronto defensively didn't give a lot of opportunities to Montreal to break that back line and to give Clint Irwin a lot of work. It wasn't necessarily easy. You had Salazar and Drogba, and you had that schematic change from Montreal, a 4-4-2 type of formation compared to a 4-2-3-1. Usually, it is a movable formation and overlapping with the midfield and the flanks. But with all the changes from Montreal last night, Bernier was suspended because of the red card in Toronto. Let's not get started on that call. But for me, for Montreal last night, it might be a blessing in disguise where now they know and they don't have a choice but to focus on one competition, one front only, and that's Major League Soccer. The way they're positioned, they're in a good spot if they finish strong. So they go back to the winning ways, and it might be a blessing in disguise. As for Vancouver and Toronto, things are going to get crowded for Vancouver rather quickly. So it's going to be interesting to see how they manage both fronts.
Yeah, Toronto, of course, they have 2 more games to play, obviously, coming up very quickly. At least they don't have,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the final, for those that don't know, starts 1 day less, 2 weeks from 2 weeks from yesterday, and that first leg will be in Toronto, and then the following week it'll be in Vancouver. The format, and some people were asking a lot on Twitter last night, and I don't think the format's well understood. The defending champion is always seeded number 1 in the tournament and will always draw the NASL team that enters. Although I don't know what they'd do if an NASL team actually won it. They'd have to rejig that, I think, because obviously I don't know who would play in the quarterfinal stage at that point. But however, as it stands right now, if an MLS team wins it, they are seeded number 1 and they play the NASL team in the first round, or the semifinals, and the other 2 MLS teams obviously play. And the highest remaining seed will host the second leg of the final. It's that simple. Vancouver seeded 1. Toronto and Montreal were 2-3. Montreal was 2. Toronto was 3. It doesn't really matter. It's half a dozen, 1/6 the other. Whoever gets through is going to be, below Vancouver and ahead of the NASL. So it's pretty cut and dry that way.
Exactly. But again, let's reminisce and let's just put a little bit of salt in the wound, because it helps people realize how important it is, but how that timing of the calendar is kind of weird for the Voyageurs Cup and that CONCACAF Champions League spot. The next possible presence for the Montreal Impact and Ottawa, or Edmonton for that matter, in the CONCACAF Champions League will be for the one that starts in the fall of 2018, Duane.
And not to be the last week of August where it starts.
Exactly. It's even worse.
The last week of August 2018. So you're looking at a long stretch. Like even TFC, or Vancouver, if they were to win it, well, Vancouver's obviously in it, but if TFC were to win it in Vancouver, they're not. It's still more than a year away before you're seeing CCL games at BMO Field, and that's going to be a doozy for the Argos if that happens. But
and you don't know what type of roster the team will have. Will it Bradley? Will an Altidore still be there in the fall of 2018? That's a very good question. We're talking about 2 teams from now. That's how I see it.
No doubt. That's
Never mind Giovinco. He has a better
well,
shot of being there, I guess, than the other two, but still.
Yeah, I think Giovinco's going to finish his contract out, as we've said before. So that would be his final year of this contract. From TFC's perspective, at one point Greg Vanney had 6 natural defenders out there. That's kind of the state of where the lineup is right now in terms of injuries and internationals. But I actually will give him some credit. I like the way he worked the subs last night, especially like when he brought Giovinco on. That was almost a defensive sub in the sense that you put Giovinco on and suddenly the Impact can't push forward as much as they were just prior to that. And it allows Toronto to control the ball a little bit more. And because Montreal suddenly has to pay attention to the little Italian dude, otherwise they'll score on them, right? So I think that was a smart sub at the right time. And they used Giovinco just the right amount in this set.
And again, Duane, I've mentioned how Toronto impressed me last night and how you have to give full credit and full measure for Toronto. Now, for the Impact, I don't want to throw them under the bus at all because this decision, if it is a decision or just if you work with the circumstances, maybe it's a good thing for the Impact, for this roster that is injured a lot over the last few months, that is still not necessarily the youngest roster in MLS when you have a Didier Drogba. Yes, you have younger players, Ontivero, Piatti, and Venegas, just to name a few, but the Drogba, Donadel, and Bernier are not the youngest in the league. So when you have a lot of players that are on the other side of that peak, they have to rest sometimes. And that calendar is going to be a lot easier for the Impact with a lot less of double weeks because of either CCL or because of the MLE Canadian Championship. So because of that reason, a lot less travel as well. No travel to Vancouver needed. No Drogba controversy on the pitch. So maybe it's a good thing for the Impact. And now they know what they have to focus on. Now they know when they can rest Drogba, when he can be effective, when he can play. Piatti will be back in 1 or 2 weeks now, resting and recuperating. Well, not resting, but recuperating and from a fractured thumb. Well, it was more of a ligament in the thumb, but still, he got an operation 2 weeks ago and it was 2 to 3 weeks out. So he should be fine. It was decided to do the operation because it was on the schedule, on the timing. It was probably the best way with the international break. He suffered the injury against Colorado a few weeks ago. So for that, for Montreal, the fact that they could rest and now focus on Major League Soccer for once, which wasn't the case since 2012, like you mentioned, might be a good thing.
Yeah, could be a blessing in disguise. I've said that I think it was time for Toronto to take the competition seriously again, but I did actually advocate for them to sort of take a step back a few years ago when they were struggling so much. They were always winning this competition, and it was good for the fans to have that happen during those bleak years because it gave some reason to go to the stadium, some reason to pay attention because the CCL games were coming in August. But I think it ultimately hurt their ability to compete in Major League Soccer, and that team just needed to compete in Major League Soccer.
Here's a stat, right? Is there ever a MLS Cup champion that fared well in the CCL the same time? No.
Yeah. Well, you notice the Galaxy don't usually take the CCL all that seriously. I guess maybe the time they played TFC might have been the closest they came to carrying about it in Beckham's final season. But yeah, Kevin, it's got to be a little disappointing though. Well, what is the mood right now amongst the hardcore supporters? Have you had a chance to sort of look at some of that stuff today? Because they
deception last night was first of all, the crowd and all that was very, very small, but there's many reasons for that.
Weather, I think.
Weather played it. Yeah, it was like 9 degrees Celsius last night in Montreal. Raining and cold. And yeah, so in May, we're supposed to be like 12 degrees hotter than that. And we're talking about Celsius here for our American listeners. So that could explain the crowd, the fact that it's weekday game of the MLE Canadian Championship. It is part of the season tickets when it's the first leg of the season of the MLE.
Yeah.
But no, exactly.
You were also losing the game by 2 goals. So
imagine if those 2 goals were not there. That's still the feeling that it was because those 2 goals were late in the first leg. So yeah, but no, you're right. The feeling of the fan base is deception right now, but it's not as bleak as other years. Yes, the diehards and hardcore are going to say, "Oh, you didn't take this tie seriously. We traveled to Toronto to see this team got 4 goals conceded." That's always going to be a point, and that was going to be deception, and fans are going to be mad about it, and that's all well and good. But on the big picture, on the big scheme of things, I think this year people understand that with the roster that we do have, positive and negative aspect of the roster, negative being the age, even though it's not necessarily a negative point at all time. Look at Drogba and how when he scores a goal, nobody talks about his age. So for that reason, they see hope in Major League Soccer, and they're gonna probably wait to do more criticism for a few months when the impact is going to be or not in the thick of things come late summer.
I don't think there's any way you could argue that the Impact didn't take the tie seriously.
No, of course. Well, the 2 late goals, and if you just look at the strength of the lineup, that's enough for me. When you have Drogba starting both ties, Duane, it tells you that they took that tie seriously.
They just lost. It's that simple. I mean, I'm sure that Impact fans, especially the hardcore fans, are quite frustrated. They've lost 3 straight to the Clowns now, or not lost last night, but you know what I mean? Like,
they didn't lose last time, but they lost a tie, so it does count as a loss. Don't tell any player last night, oh, you had a draw. How do you feel? No, it was a loss. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So for that reason, 3 straight defeat. 2016 has not been really good for the Impact side of the Two Solitudes Derby, but you know what?
2 games still to go.
Exactly, and you never know what can happen in the playoffs, and we've seen what can happen last year. So there's that.
Yeah. Quickly on Ottawa's side, what do they take away from this? I wonder. I think getting the result at home against a young Vancouver team, but I don't think that matters. I think just having that strip out there with 11,000 fans, beating an MLS strip, some of those 11,000 fans probably didn't even watch the second leg. Let's be frank, right?
So let's just forget that it's a 2-leg. Let's just remember this game where we beat the Vancouver Whitecaps.
Yeah, and I think it was for a team that's been struggling a little bit this year. I think that it probably had to add a little bit of a confidence boost. Although we were talking off air that it was just, even though when it was 3-0 in that last few minutes, you knew logically that if Ottawa could score that they would win the tie, but no one where I was watching had the feeling that could happen. So there was not a lot of tension really, or a lot of thought that they could actually do it. And they really didn't have a clear scoring chance in that game from what I saw.
No, exactly. They tried hard, especially in the last 12 minutes. This after the last change by Carl Robinson, Ottawa was having the ball pressure. It was going literally all out forward to trying to get that goal, because that goal would have propelled them into the final of the American Canadian Championship. They tried long balls from the flanks. They tried, especially on the right side of their pitch, to break that box, to get into the box, but never could really get a look on goal on Tornagi, who was the goalkeeper for Vancouver last night. They never really had a clear shot, once or twice, but the only opportunity really, I think, was Rosenblum, and Rosenblum was maybe skied about like 6 feet too high, and it was like the only kind of a look they had on goal during that period. No, they couldn't break that defense, because it was a defense for Vancouver yesterday.
Yeah, absolutely. But good for them. Got a historic win over Edmonton. Were able to get the win in the first leg, or first game of the semifinal stage against the Whitecaps. That has to be something to build on for future years. There is a gap between the two leagues. I don't think anyone that denies that is living in denial, right? So it will be a while before we see an NASL team win this tournament, but it will happen, I think, one day. It's just such a short sprint that eventually there will be the upset go through. Edmonton's almost got through to the final a couple times now. We'll see, though. It's another year by and another all MLS final. Let's take a quick break, Kevin. We'll come back. I got one more V-Cup point that I want to talk about. We'll open the lines up if you want to ask us V-Cup questions, and then we'll set up our Euro coverage after that.
You are listening to SPN Radio, powered by the Sports Podcasting Network. Visit sportspodcastingnetwork.com for more.
Give us a call. Studio line 778-400-SPN1. That's 778-400-SPN1. Give us a call right now. Lines are open.
778-400 SPN1. That's 778-400 SPN1, Kevin.
Exactly. Give us a call. Talk about the Voyagers Cup. Talk about the Copa. Lines are open. Give us a call right now.
All right. One other topic I want to talk about. This stems from the women's game on Monday. Peter Matopoli, the general secretary for the CSA, was interviewed at halftime by Luke and Jason, and he basically let the cat out of the bag that they're going to expand this tournament. He all but confirmed it, that they will be expanding the Voyagers Cup next year, probably. He didn't really give details beyond that. There are lots of speculative articles that are out there. There's even some leaked documents that are out there that sort of suggest that what's going to happen is that you're going to have the PLSQ and Ligue 1 Ontario involved in some way, and probably the amateur champions of Canada. And if you do that, Kevin, it is an open competition. It's not exactly like an open draw, but any team in the country could conceivably win it if that were the case. And I think that that's a big step forward.
Exactly. You can have a team like, I don't know, FC L'Assomption or les Griffons d'Outremont with Federico Mugen go on and the Voyagers Cup. Hey, the glory of the cup, make their way to the CONCACAF Champions League. Hey, dream is open. If it's an open cup, dream can be open, Duane.
Yeah, look, I'll give you another angle on this too. One of the big battlegrounds that's going to take place next year particularly is with KW United. KW United is in the PDL right now. They're a very successful PDL program for those that know, don't know. They are under the gun in terms of when they need to leave the PDL. The CSA is refusing to sanction after this year. They're not very happy about that, and they're going to fight this probably. That's what I've heard. They're going to try and stay in the PDL. They have a lot of people up there that are upset by the idea that they're being forced out, which would be into Ligue 1 Ontario. And the rationale behind this is because Ligue 1 Ontario exists, and the CSA believes very strongly that local solutions should be what we're going for, that we need to get our teams out of American leagues because we can control things like quotas and other things like that if we're playing in Canada, and they believe that is the best for the game moving forward. So they're willing to force teams like KW United to perhaps arguably allegedly take a slight step down for a couple years while Ligue 1 Ontario fills or bridges that gap between where it is now and where PDL is, if there is a gap there. And look, there are some direct examples that suggest that there might be, but I don't think it's as big as people think, especially if you look at a good team playing sort of a middling team. If you play the best teams in the PDL, they might be able to dominate. And KW United is the defending champion, so they feel that maybe they're taking a step down. But that's London came in this year. They were a PDL team. They're in Ligue 1 this year, and they are in fact probably the best team in Ligue 1 Ontario right now. So that does suggest that maybe there is a level change there. And the defending champions from Ligue 1 Ontario are also the Oakville Blue Devils, which are essentially the Toronto Lynx, which were a PDL team. So there you go. But
Duane, just because a couple of good teams could maybe, we talk about gaps, and we talked about the NASL gap earlier with the MLS. Yes, the best team could maybe fare okay with the small team, but you need to look at the median, not the average, but the median, the in between. That group will probably not fare well with the other group. So maybe that's the way to truly judge a league, if that thing can actually be done objectively. Because that's not necessarily easy to objectively analyze and compare two leagues of different levels.
No, look, I on the whole, and if you talk to people in Ligue 1, they'll admit that they're probably a little bit behind, but the league's only 3 years old. So give it some time. And you need to bring the strongest programs in to help bridge that gap too, right? The point I was making, though, is that having an access to the Voyagers Cup might be a carrot that will allow a team like KW United to stop the fight and accept the move into Ligue 1 Ontario, because they're not going to open this up to the PDL teams. That's simply not going to happen. So this will be the only way into the Canadian Championship. Being part of a Canadian league will be outside of Major League Soccer and the NASL, of course. But below that level, being part of a Canadian-only league will be a requirement to be part of that competition. So that might be the carrot that brings it in. It's just another angle to look at when you think about that PDL battle, which we've talked about. If you want to go back in our archives, you can find a whole show that we did a lot of this on. It is a very wonky kind of topic, I understand, but a lot of our lot of our listeners are wonky kind of people. No offense. Love you guys.
In a positive way, like the positive side of wonky.
Yes, exactly.
778-400-SPN1. That's 778-400-7761. Lines are open.
All right. That's final question on the Voyageurs Cup, and then we'll move on to briefly set up our Euro coverage and talk about the games this weekend. Kevin, who do you think the favorite is in the Voyageurs Cup?
That's a good question. Vancouver, Toronto. Depends of, like, we've seen the roster. Javinko seems to be back 100% now. He played about 16 minutes last night. So that being said, Vancouver, with their big win last night, the way that they were able to dominate majority of this game could be interesting. They had trouble scoring goals. It's been the Achilles heel of Vancouver for the last couple of years. If they can replicate this against Toronto, that has been able to play more defensively in 2016 under the guidance of Vanni and the new defense of Drew Moore and company, that could be interesting. It's going to be quite literally Vancouver's offense against Toronto's revamped defense. Will it be the same as other battles between the two this season? Probably. It's going to be interesting to see if the home and away factor, the 2-game tie, has a different tactically way for the team to either set up or take this as a whole and not go all out in the first leg.
Yeah, Vancouver traditionally has started a rotation lineup in the first legs of these things, even in the final. It's just their philosophy in the tournament, and they feel that they should be able to win it with the lineups they put out there. It's essentially their philosophy. And similar, how do you see like an English team might treat the League Cup, right? Like this is the tournament for these guys, and if they win it, they win it. So I don't really have a problem with that. I think that an X factor that we need to consider is the amount of travel that Vancouver's doing this month. This will now be they flew to Ottawa, then back to Vancouver. Now they're going to fly to Toronto, and then they're back to Vancouver, right? And this is all in a 4-week period. So that's a lot of cross-country travel. Vancouver's used to travel because they're out there on the far left coast. So they do have to travel a lot, but they do generally try and keep the travel in the West for the most part for the Western team. So that is a lot of cross-country travel. And traditionally speaking, it works both ways. Traditionally speaking, teams that when they fly across the country tend to struggle. That said, Vancouver didn't struggle the last time they came to Toronto.
Exactly. So it's always a perspective too. Vancouver is slowly having the type of lineup that they can manage. And Cal Robinson is having positive experiences juggling the lineup over the last couple of years. So maybe he will be able to get the most out of the second half of the second leg, because basically that's where it's going to be all out offense if any team has the win in sight at that time.
It's a bit of a cop-out. I'm not going to give a favorite right now because I need to see what the lineups look like health-wise and whether the USA is out of the Copa and lots of things like that before I decide exactly who the favorite in this competition is when we get to the final. We still have almost 2 weeks before that first game. All right. That's speaking of the Euro. Well, not speaking of the Euro. I never spoke of it until this very moment. But let's speak of the Euro.
Yes, exactly. Duane, it starts tomorrow.
Yeah, it does, and I'm excited. I'm enjoying the Copa a great deal, and I'm excited to be watching. I'm going to be watching 5 games a day some days, which is going to be a lot of soccer. But nonetheless, 6 actually on Saturday because I'll be watching a League One Ontario game as well.
How many screens is in your living room right now?
Well, yeah, I'll be out in the natural, the world. I'll be breathing air to watch that League One Ontario game.
What's that?
I don't know exactly. What's the outside again?
What are you talking about?
Tomorrow is going to be Soccer Day tomorrow entirely is going to be focused on the Euro. We're going to do a Euro preview. The show will be out at noon to 1, as it is every day. So we'll have 2 hours before the actual kickoff. So it'll be a good way if you're gearing up to go watch that to listen to us first, sort of take our opinions. If you have any pools that close, I know there's a pool that I'm going to enter that cuts off at 3 o'clock at first kickoff tomorrow. I'm going to wait as long as I can before I put that entry in. So if you're doing stuff like that, maybe you want to listen to us to get a little more hints, and then make your entry and pay your little fee if you have to. So lots of fun stuff there. What's going to happen during the Euros is we're going out at noon, and there's going to be games. Well, we might talk about that because there are games at noon, so we might work the schedule a little bit. But if we're out at noon, we'll essentially be talking about the early game, obviously, and previewing the late game, and maybe even, the game will be in the background while we're watching it, right? So we'll figure out how this works. We're also going to continue our Copa coverage, all that. They're going to be very packed shows, though, and there's not going to be a lot of time for domestic coverage. So we will ensure that you get that through the Two Solitudes family podcast. We will make sure that you get full interviews out for that, and allowing us then to focus on the Euros and on the Copa on this show.
Exactly, yes. Next week and the 3 weeks following this, during the Euro and the end of the Copa daily, you will be able to give us your feedback, your dark horse, your country, if you are from European descendant. We do have correspondents on the field, on the ground, on the old continent, to give you a perspective. So look for the same coverage as we do usually, just focused on the Euro and the Copa, starting next week on here on Soccer Today with guests, and as always, open lines.
All right. Normally on Fridays, as this show evolves, we'll sort of look ahead to the weekend, because of course we're not martyrs. We're going to take the weekends off, guys. So although Kevin might put an open lines out on Saturdays sometimes.
Yes. Saturday nights, every Saturday night is the MLS post game show at midnight, and open lines after dark Sunday nights.
Yeah, so there's lots of content out there, which you're sure you get Euro stuff. But this show itself is Monday to Friday. So we'll sort of go through the games typically on Friday. But because we're doing the Euro preview, I thought we'd just really mention the games of the weekend and sort of look ahead and think what our favorites are. Quickly on the NASL side, that's the only domestic league that we cover that's going to be going on this weekend. The story there is the Cosmos don't play, but they can clinch the spring title if both Indy and Tampa Bay lose. So that's what to watch for on the NASL side today. I know a lot of people are going to be watching the NASL this weekend. It's going to be the biggest attention focus, right, Kevin? Like everyone's going to be focused on the NASL.
Of course, it's the last game of the spring season. We're going to know who has clinched the first playoff, postseason spot for the 2016 championship of the NASL.
They really should take a break. They take a whole month off. They could figure it out. Anyway, let's go to Copa. Copa tonight, Uruguay, Venezuela, Mexico, Jamaica. We kind of talked about those games already. The Friday games, Chile, Bolivia. You would have to think that Chile's got to be the favorite there. They absolutely need to bounce back after the loss to Argentina. Argentina plays Panama. I can't see Panama getting much out of this. That group to me is just Chile and Argentina's to walk away with.
Exactly. And on June 11th, Duane, we have in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, USA at Lincoln Financial Field versus Paraguay is going to be the U.S. men's national team do or die game, because, well, if they don't get a lot of points, it could be in danger. Right now, they have 3 points in their group. They have two teams behind them, Paraguay and Costa Rica, only on 1 point. But if an upset is possible of Costa Rica beating Colombia and the United States gets just a draw against Paraguay, you're looking at a scenario where the USA and Paraguay are out of the Copa, and Colombia and Costa Rica would move on. Is this probable? Maybe.
No,
is it possible? Not necessarily.
Yeah, well, you play the games on the pitch, right? But certainly the USA looks fairly comfortable after the 4-0 win. And then Paraguay gets underrated, I think, sometimes. You remember they had that great World Cup two cycles ago, and they're not quite as strong now, but I think they sometimes get overlooked, and that's unfortunate for that team. Ecuador, Haiti, Brazil, Peru, kind of a dud Sunday to finish it off.
Ecuador is going to try to beat the record of Brazil of 7-1 in East Rutherford, New Jersey, but if I was a betting man, I would go with the under 6, because the over-under is probably going to be like around 6. Bet on the under.
Yeah, like I said, Peru is in. They need to beat Brazil. It is what it comes down to. Like a draw could technically get them through, because they're on 4 points. Ecuador's on 2. So if they go to 5, obviously that a win over Ecuador would tie them. But there's goal diff it would come down to then. And right now Peru's +1, and Ecuador's playing Haiti, because Peru only beat Haiti 1-0. So there you go. Let's move to the Euro, Kevin. France, Romania, of course, kicks it off tomorrow. It's not the best first match, but you do get to see the hosts, of course, so that's fun.
In a matchup that they can shine, and that's important. For France to start a tournament on the right foot would be something we haven't seen in a while. Usually France grows in a tournament peaking and having their best match in a final to get that trophy, usually, unless something stupid happens like in 2006, and I'm not going to get started on you, Zidane. But for France, if they do start on the right foot against Romania, all the controversy of Benzema, he's included, but he's not going to play and all that, might just go on the wayside if they can get 2-3 past the Romanian goalkeeper and have a great debut for this host tournament.
Yeah, it's a weird weekend after that because this is the true 24-team Euro is going to shine in the first week because there's a lot of smaller teams that are going to kick off on the weekend that we're going to get to see. Albania and Switzerland is the first game off on Saturday morning. That's got to be the first time that Albania has ever had a worldwide audience to watch their game. So it's an exciting time for them, I'm sure. Although the Swiss, who are sneaky good, are the heavy favorite there. Wales, who looked like crap in their build-up.
They did.
Is playing Slovakia, which a lot of people are picking Slovakia as a dark horse in this, Kevin.
Yeah, do you consider Wales a one-man team? Yes, it is the Gareth Bale show. It is maybe more this one-man team than Portugal with Ronaldo. Portugal is better surrounded than a Bale with Wales, but it's going to be interesting. Slovakia, you mentioned maybe a dark horse, or maybe coming out of the group and being able to get a win in the knockout stage. Maybe that's possible in this 24-team Euro. Poland, Northern Ireland. This is a Sunday game, and I'm interested because I've talked to Northern Irish people last night, and they were really interesting to see how they're going to fare in this first game, because if it's possible for that country to get a victory against Poland, but Poland is considered not a dark horse, but they have a rich history, and the way they qualified for this tournament was impressive. Can they beat Northern Ireland? Yeah, so it's going to be almost a barometer. We're going to see which team where they are truly with this game.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's Poland has also been noted as a dark horse in this tournament as well. So it's a tough ask for the Northern Irish, but nonetheless, go back to Saturday though. There's a feature game Saturday. It's got to be England-Russia. The English, for better or worse, are always a big attention grabber at these tournaments. They kick it off on Saturday. I don't know what to think of that team. I really don't. I never do. We'll watch them. I'll cheer for them because God help me, that's what I'm stuck doing.
And if you watch that game, Duane, you know what interests me too? It's the new Velodrome in Marseille. It's been renovated a few years ago ahead of the Euro. It looks amazing. If you remember what the old Velodrome of the Olympique de Marseille used to look like, it's similar, but just dialed up to 11. And this stadium is spectacular. The acoustic of this stadium might be the best in the world. The way it's built, wait till you see and hear what's coming from this stadium. The sights and sound of this England-Russia tie on Saturday, June 11th, will be very, very spectacular.
Yeah, it's exactly. Sunday morning's actually really a couple good games. You get to see the world champions German in the noon game playing Ukraine. But to me, Turkey-Croatia, of the first weekend matchups, that's your closest matchup on both sides. That's a fun one, and that's a nice little way to spend your Sunday watching those games. And then add Poland, Northern Ireland at the end to spice it up. Makes up for the kind of dud of a Copa America lineup on Sunday.
Well, you kind of figured that it was done maybe on purpose, because we all know the Copa people, like the grand walls of this world this week, have talked about how, I was afraid that the Copa wasn't going to fare well against Euro. And so far, so good. Yeah, Euro hasn't started yet. So far, so good. Obviously, this weekend might be another story.
Oh, yeah. Well, the numbers aren't even going to be close in Canada. You can't watch the damn thing other than Finnish TV. But yeah. And on other means as well. Which
and the games on Big Fox. Let's face it, Big Fox is available in Canada. With affiliates.
There's a Friday night game for sure. One of the Friday night games is being shown on Fox. So I know that. I was looking ahead on my guide today, so I'll be able to watch a couple of them on my TV over the weekend, which is nice because I pay for $30 a month for soccer stuff. So you think maybe I should be able to watch it.
Exactly. You are able to watch India and Pakistan having a test match every given Sunday, but you're not able to watch a Copa.
Yeah. All right. Kevin, we've gone over on this segment, so I'm thinking we won't worry about a break, and we'll just briefly touch on the last thing that I wanted to touch on, and maybe we'll shut it down at 5-2 today, just because we're we've had a lot of information. It's a tight day, and I got a lot of research this afternoon for the Euro.
Absolutely. And if you want to give us a call, last call 778-400-SPN1. What do you think of the Copa versus Euro battle of audience? Is there one, or can you just watch them all?
Yeah. I'm sure that in the States, it'll be interesting to see what the U.S. numbers match up against, say the England game or something that has a lot of following in the States. So that'll be interesting. I suspect the USA will still draw them, but how close the Euro can get will tell you a lot in that Mexico audience too, which the Mexico audience is always hard to track because there's the Spanish language to factor in as well on the broadcast there. Yeah. There was an article in 442 today that's really interesting. I encourage you to go look it up. It's called Klinsmann's Not the Problem. There's been a lot of debate about Klinsmann and what he's doing to the U.S. men's national team and whether or not he should be fired. And there are a lot of people out there that believe that. And, I'm not American, so I can have kind of a neutral view of him. I don't think he's a good national team coach. However, this article sort of lays out a lot of the reasons that Klinsmann was hired and speaks to the idea that firing him doesn't really solve anything in terms of what the real problem is. And what they've identified as the real problem is more systematic than it is do with what's happening at the very top of the pyramid. And this is an argument that's very familiar to us in Canada because we hear it all here all the time that it's not so much, it doesn't matter what you're doing with the tree. It's not going to bloom if the roots are dead. And that's kind of what we're talking about here.
There's always going to be a couple of branches that are doing pretty well because they're strong on their own, and on their own they were able to get the amount of nutrients necessary to grow. But as a whole, the tree might not be strong. And when you talked about Canada talking about it, the U.S. men's national team situation with their coach reminds me of what Team Canada in hockey is and the national program of hockey is, in a way where despite and in spite maybe more of the way the development and the streamlining of the best players of the elite program is, they're still good because of the amount of players playing this damn game. They're going to be a lot at the top still, but doesn't mean that it's because of the way they were brought up. Maybe it's despite the way they were brought up. They were able, because of their own discipline, of their own work ethic and their own talent and skill level, able to make it. Is it because of how they were brought up? That's the question.
Yeah. As I said, I encourage you to seek it out. It does ask a lot of questions, and there's a couple other articles that are coming out this week. They talk about, there's one that the U.S. soccer currently only serves the white kids, and that's an argument that's been going on for a long time. And if you look at the U.S. National teams, they are a little pale sometimes, and that's an odd thing for a multicultural country like that, particularly on the women's side. And there are initiatives to try and increase the amount of visible minorities that are playing women's soccer in the U.S., but it's going to be a while. It's a lot of food for thought, and I've always believed that, again, to compare it to Canada, that a lot of the problems the U.S. have are the exact same, and in some cases they might even be worse. I think that their pay-to-play model is much more common in the States than it is in Canada. There's a lot more private academies popping up here that are not pay-per-pay in terms of their model. Some are, but they're not. Most of them, you talk about your Sigmas and all that. They have elements of pay in that, but most of that system at the elite level is you're playing if you're good enough, right? So I think there are elements that we're actually doing better in this country, but the pure numbers, don't make up for that when you look at the States. But a lot of food for thought there.
So an article by Graham Parker on 442 USA came out 20 hours ago, and I encourage you to give it a read to have. Sometimes we don't. An objective perspective on what a coach can and cannot do, and if he is or not a problem.
Yeah, and it talks a lot about like the other side of Klinsmann's job, the technical director job, and that's my position on him. Is I think that he might be okay at the technical director if they only had him in that position. I think he's not the best manager at the top level. I don't think his tactical awareness is all that good, to be honest. Like I said, the German teams that he managed in the World Cup to get that third place finish, I think Lowe was the brains, and we saw that when he eventually led them to the World Cup this past cycle. I encourage you to read. I'm looking at it right now on my bookshelf, Das Reboot. A lot of people probably have by now. It does highlight how the German system from a disaster in 2000 turned it around to become what is clearly the best team in the world right now. And it's just an excellent read. If you're a development geek, you will love that book because it really spells out what they did on the development side and how they fixed things and how they streamlined things. The thing is, a lot of people look at Germany, look at other countries like that and go, well, just do that. It's not that simple. There's a lot of politics at play.
Fine, sure, we'll just do that. Yeah, that's easy for you to say. And it's easy for you to justify us getting China resources sometimes too, because let's face it, North America, and I'll include Canada and United States in this conversation, slowly but surely Mexico is almost in the same level of there's a lot of options for kids and sports to play. And it's really hard to just make them play your sport. This is an actual, almost a problem. The offer and demand and how many sports you can play as a kid, it's almost crazy in our society in North America compared to other options. Some places, it's only soccer, and that does have an effect on the long run of the amount of player you do have in your pool.
Yeah, one final thought, and this I hear this bantied around a lot when you're talking about Klinsmann. They talk about him not "quote unquote" developing the players well enough, and whenever I hear that, I cringe because national team managers don't develop players. That's just inaccurate. That does not happen. That is not where you develop players. You develop players like probably up to 16, 17. That's when you're developing, not when they're a 24-year-old pro. National team managers mold players a little bit, and they may polish players, but they don't develop them. So let's get that out of the way. They also play positions, play players completely out of position and make baffling decisions, and that happens on both sides of the borders in North America with the Daniel Henry right back project that we continue to watch play out here with our eyes closed.
To be fair, last couple of times it actually looked good. But because we were so hard on Floro that I'm going to give him credit that it might not, it's hard for me to even say it. It might start to be working, but we'll see.
Yeah, well, I give credit to Floro because I think that he's found a way to make this team competitive by making them defensively solid. And this is the argument I always give with people when we talk about Floro is that if you open this thing up and you went offensive, well, that's great. We might score a couple more goals, but we're probably losing 4-2. What he's done is taken a very hodgepodge cycle and got us to within 3 points of making the Hex, which to me is a remarkable accomplishment with the group that he had. Can he take us till the way? Can he take the next step? Do they need to bring someone else in to finish that job? That's an argument I'm willing to hear, but I well argue with you if you tell me that Floro hasn't done overall a decent job with the group that he had to get them as far as he has had. That said, they've only won 8 times since he took over, so let's not get too carried away here, guys.
Exactly. It's not like Canada is about to beat Spain for the World Cup anytime soon.
Yeah. No, I don't think that we need to worry about Canada ever winning the World Cup. Making one, I can dream a little bit there. I can dream. Kevin, on that note, I'm going to shut up, and I'm going to let you say goodbye.
Before we let you go, we urge you to go to Patreon. We ask you to go to patreon.com/sports podcast network. That's patreon.com/sports podcast network. You can be a patron of this show and of the network. $1 a month goes a long way to help us pay all the bills necessary to give you these live broadcasts, call-in opportunities, and all the beautiful thing that we are trying to do here on SPN. Your support is greatly appreciated. Now, we've been listener supported for over a year, and with your help, we want to make it 2. So you can go to patreon.com/sports podcast network. And until next time, for Duane Rollins, I am Kevin Laramee. Have a great soccer. You're listening to Soccer Today on SPN Radio. You can find the on-demand version of this very show on iTunes, Stitcher, Feedburner, Podbay Player, Podbean, anywhere you get your podcasts under the Sports Podcasting Network feed. Subscribe to our YouTube page to make sure you never miss a live show talking about soccer today, the MLS postgame show, Open Lines After Dark, 5 Rings Daily during the Olympics. Make sure you subscribe and give us a follow on Twitter at SportsPodNet and like our Facebook page, facebook.com/Sports Podcasting Network. You were listening to SPN, the Sports Podcasting Network. Visit us, sportspodcastingnetwork.com.